Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the podcast or the channel, depending on where you are listening or watching. And if you are new here, I just wanted to say welcome. If you are a return listener or viewer, I want to say thank you for the support that we have had so far. It has been so fun to do this, and I'm excited to be back onto a regular flow with this. And if you are watching the video, I did just want to ask for a little bit of patience because I am new to recording the podcast with video and not just audio. So I'm still working out camera and lighting and angles and all of that good stuff so that way we can get the best quality content. Today, we are talking about painful periods and 5 ways to overcome cramps and brutal PMS. If your period puts you out of commission every single month, you are not alone. And today we are going to talk about how to make this better for you. The mood swings, the cramps, the low energy, the bloating, it's exhausting. Trust me, I know because I've been there. But the thing is that this is not something you just have to live with or just deal with because you're a woman. And so many people that you speak to, whether it's your doctor, whether it's the mainstream media, is going to tell you that that's the case, but it's just simply not true. So today I'm going to break down 5 ways to reduce cramps, ease PMS, and actually feel good during your cycle. And a lot of the times when we say cycle, right, we just think of our period. So I want you to think about your cycle as your full menstrual cycle for the month. Most people have around a 28-day cycle. If you don't, if you have shorter or longer than that, that's totally okay. This can still apply to you, but I want you to think about your cycle like as the full cycle from end to end of all of the phases of our cycle, opposed to just your period being your cycle. If you want even more support than just this episode, I've created a free guide to banishing your PMS that you can download. It focuses on the strategies that we talk about in this episode, gives you full day of eating examples and supplement recommendations that will help you throughout your cycle. And I will tell you how to download it at the end of this episode, so stick around. Before we dive into the 5 strategies, I did want to just kind of highly touch on why this matters. And I think it's pretty straightforward. We all know how this can negatively impact our life, taking time off work because you're in so much pain and discomfort, or maybe you can't afford to take a day off work, so you feel like half a human, or just trying to survive the workday. In relationships, feeling moody and pain, on edge, hands up if there's ever been that moment where you just want to punch your boyfriend in the face for no reason. And it's just because your hormones are all over the place. Skipping workouts because your cramps are dreadful, right? Or maybe feeling like a little bitch because you can barely pick up the weights that you were lifting with ease the week before. Confidence in the toilet because you feel bloated, you feel puffy, you feel gross, and fluctuations are absolutely normal. Like, I would be lying if I said that you were expected to feel the same all month long, right? This has been scientifically proven, and this is something to actually embrace, that we go through different seasons in our cycle. But what we want to do is optimize those seasons and work with those seasons so that way when our period comes, it doesn't completely wipe us out for the week, opposed to just accepting feeling like crap and morphing into the Wicked Witch of the West. Did you know that 80% of women actually experience period pain and symptoms like extreme cramps, bloating, mood swings, but don't realize that while this is common, it's not normal. It is a sign of an underlying hormonal imbalance in their body. So why does this happen? How do we get here, right? So before we get to talking about how to fix all of these issues, I first want to talk about what causes them, because oftentimes you can't fix something if you don't understand it. We're going to keep this to just a higher level overview today, but if you do want me to do a deeper dive into these in another episode, shoot me a message on Instagram and I can do another episode with more of an explanation behind each of these causes. So contributing factor number 1 is going to be inflammation. And if you get intense cramps, bloating, headaches, inflammation is likely playing a role in this. Inflammation increases prostaglandins, which are the hormone-like chemicals that trigger muscle contractions in your uterus to help shed out that uterus lining that's been built up from estrogen over the month. The higher they are, the worse that your cramps are. Things like processed foods, refined sugars, excess caffeine, alcohol, if you're somebody who's sensitive to dairy or gluten and that causes inflammation for you, all spike inflammation. Contributing factor number 2 is going to be your hormonal fluctuations. And while hormonal fluctuations are completely normal during the month, and we do want that natural rise and fall of estrogen and progesterone, it's when they're imbalanced in relation to each other is when that can make your symptoms much worse. So for example, if your estrogen is too high in comparison to your progesterone, this can lead to heavier periods, more painful periods, more drastic mood swings, right? This can happen from things like high stress load, poor gut health, and even environmental toxins. The third contributing factor is going to be nutrient deficiencies. So your body relies on and needs key nutrients to regulate your hormones and to reduce the cramps in your body. But if you're low in things like magnesium, B vitamins, omega-3s, your PMS symptoms are going to hit a lot harder. So this is why it's really important to make sure that you're eating a micronutrient-rich diet and or having the necessary supplementation to replenish those deficiencies. The fourth and final, for the sake of this podcast, thing to consider or cause of bad periods in PMS is stress and a cortisol imbalance. If you are under high amounts of chronic stress, your body is going to make more cortisol, which will actually suppress progesterone. And your progesterone is the hormone that helps keep your PMS in check. Having high levels of cortisol chronically also will continue to create more inflammation in the body, which was the number one thing we were considering. So this is why stress can make your symptoms much worse. So now that we've talked a little bit about the underlying causes of painful periods and brutal PMS, now I want to talk about how we can address this and get you feeling your best. And if not completely banish some of these symptoms, at least to make them a lot better and more tolerable for you. So we're going to talk about 5 of them. The first is really eating to reduce your period pain and making your nutrition support your cycle. Now, in this episode specifically, we are looking at, like I said, period pain and PMS. I would like to do another episode. I think maybe like next month, I'm going to do an episode diving into your cycle as a whole and how you can really eat to support each phase of your cycle. So we're not going to get into all that today or would be here all day. So for this reasoning specifically to support your period, we really want to focus on implementing these things in your luteal phase, especially your late luteal phase, which is basically the week before your period at an absolute minimum. And we want to really focus on filling it with lots of whole nutrient dense foods, right? Getting key nutrients is going to be very, very important when it comes to supporting your body and supporting your healthy cycle. So we want to focus on magnesium-rich foods like dark leafy greens and dark chocolate are examples of that. We want to focus on getting lots of omega-3s, so like salmon and flaxseed are 2 examples of that. And we want to focus on anti-inflammatory foods. This is going to be like berries that have lots of antioxidants, turmeric, ginger. You can have those in the form of tea, or you could add them as like, a powder onto things. And we want to try to stay away from inflammatory sources. So this is going to look like refined sugars. So eating lots of cookies, cakes, all that kind of stuff. And I know it sounds crazy because usually that's what you crave before your period, but that is part of this cycle and this loop of imbalanced hormones, right? So if you do want to eat some of those more refined sugar, sweeter things around your period and you find that those cravings are happening a lot, you want to make sure that you are making homemade versions of those so you can control the ingredients that are being put into that. And also really focusing on balancing your blood sugar leading up to your period, right? Because if you have more balanced blood sugars, those cravings are going to be kept more at bay. We also want to avoid a lot of processed foods, right? So eating a lot of packaged processed foods, convenient foods, and trying to eat out, like takeout, even restaurant foods, like limiting that as much as possible that week before your period, because this is where foods are cooked with a lot of inflammatory seed oils and just not the greatest quality ingredients, which is also going to increase your inflammation. And then lastly, we'll touch on caffeine and alcohol, right? So both of these can be inflammatory sources. Alcohol, we know, right? Alcohol is like literally a poison in your body. And caffeine obviously is okay in moderation, right? I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can't drink coffee, but you want to listen to your body because you are more sensitive to it that week leading up to your period, right? So maybe pulling back a little bit, maybe subbing like full caffeinated beverages for half caffs or swapping out from coffee to like green tea or matcha the week before your period. Something else to consider while we are talking about nutrition hacks is that in the days leading up to your period, usually the week leading up to your period, you actually burn more calories. So if you are feeling hungrier during that time of the month, that is actually normal. There is nothing wrong with you, and it's not just your cravings running rampant. You are actually hungrier and your body wants more fuel. So something that I would recommend during this is actually making sure that you are keeping your protein intake relatively high. So if you have an actual protein goal, if you're somebody who tracks your food and you have macro goals, making sure that you're hitting your protein goal consistently. Or if you're somebody who's like not really in that space and you're not tracking your food, you don't have macro goals, just making sure that you are eating at least 25 to 35 grams of protein with each meal throughout the day will help because one, it will keep you more satiated and fuller for longer. So you are going to feel less like you're going to go and eat the entire world, and it will help to stabilize your blood sugar levels, right? So this will help keep those cravings in check and help balance your energy and make you feel better throughout the day. The next thing on our list of things to do to help your period pain and reduce your PMS symptoms is taking helpful supplements. Now, I want to preface this by saying that a supplement never substitutes real food. A supplement is an added layer to the cake when you are already doing the foundational things. So if you are already optimizing your nutrition and doing all of these things that I was just talking about in number 1, then add in a supplement. You never want to take a supplement in replacement to do something that real food is supposed to do. So just as an example, taking a greens powder does not substitute eating fruits and vegetables. So I'm sorry if that's not what you want to hear, but it is the raw, honest truth. So when we're taking supplements, there are a couple supplements that we can take to help improve our cycle health. And this is going to be magnesium, which is responsible for easing cramps and relaxing muscles in your body, along with hundreds of other metabolic processes. Magnesium is like the gold supplement, in my opinion. I think that most, if not all, women should be taking a good quality magnesium. Magnesium bisglycinate is my favorite. Next is going to be omega-3s, and taking a good omega-3 is going to help with fighting inflammation in the body. It is an anti-inflammatory, and it's going to help with bloating alongside healthy hormone production and healthy brain function. Then next we have your B vitamins. So taking a good quality B complex can really help support your energy levels and regulation of mood. Then last but not least is Vitex, or also known as chasteberry or chase tree berry. And this is going to help balance your hormones naturally. So it is a very gentle and natural way to help balance out those estrogen and progesterone levels, which is going to help you minimize your PMS. Obviously, little disclaimer, these are just general recommendations on things that I see help women on an everyday basis improve their cycle health and that I implement with clients on a need to use basis, right? So when I work with clients, like we do a deep intake form and assess their symptoms and what's going on in their life and use these as necessary. So I wouldn't recommend just like going out and buying these right away, but these are things for you to dig into and look into as potential tools in your toolbox to helping ease your period pain and improve your PMS. If you are not sure if you should be taking these or if these align with your symptoms, please feel free to send me a DM, reach out to me, and I can give you some more insight. Now, moving on to our third way to reduce period pain and improve your PMS symptoms is moving your body, utilizing your exercise and your workouts to work with you and work in flow with your body opposed to working against it, right? So when we're talking about exercise, there's two pathways that I see that can be negative for women in the case of what we're talking about in this episode, right? So the first one is going to be being very sedentary. When you're very sedentary and you sit a lot and you're not getting a lot of movement in general, this is obviously not healthy for your body. And it is going to lead to underlying health issues, which can then lead to worse period pain, PMS, hormonal imbalances, and all of that kind of stuff, right? The opposite is when we're over exercising and we're doing too much, placing too much physiological stress on the body. So even though you think that you're being healthy because you're super active, it's actually working against you because you're placing too much stress on the body by doing too much, by not giving it enough recovery. And this can come from under fueling, under eating, right? Under resting, not getting enough sleep, not taking enough rest days. There's a lot of, nuance within that. And we won't dig too deep into that again today because we'll be here all day. I've got other episodes that cover that. I'll link them in the description. But we really need to know when to push forward and when to pull back, right? And part of this is building a intuitive relationship with our body and being able to actually listen to it and block out the noise of the society of like, you need to work out this many days per week. You need to be in a calorie deficit. You need to do this. You need to do that. And actually listen to what your body needs and when it needs it. And then also part of that is learning the process and understanding of like what makes sense to do when in correspondence with your cycle, right? So if you track your cycle and you have a regular cycle and you know when your period is coming, and you have taken the time to educate yourself on like how that works. And again, like I said, I am going to do another episode soon talking more about like period tracking or cycle tracking and understanding the phases of your cycle better and how to work with that. But for the purpose of this episode, if you know when you typically get your period, right, and you use a cycle tracking app, block out those first couple of days of if you know the day before your period and days 1 and 2 of your period, like typically, you do not feel great and you're in this process of wanting to balance your hormones and support your health, block out those 2 to 3 days and be like, those are not going to be gym days for me or like harder gym days for me. And I'm going to work out these days that week instead. And on those days, I'm either going to do like a lighter workout, I'm going to do a walk, I'm going to do some stretching, some yoga, whatever it might be, right? And those are going to be the best movement choices when you have really bad cramps. When you have really bad cramps, you actually don't want to be super sedentary. You want to get a little bit of blood flow and movement in your body. It's actually going to help ease the cramps, but nothing over strenuous. So like a gentle stretch, a restorative yoga session, going for a light walk, all of those things are going to be helpful. But that way you're still getting a little bit of movement and you're doing something right on those days. And you also don't feel guilty because you're not missing your workouts that week. And, theoretically, like I talked about before, if we're not overtraining and overdoing it, you shouldn't be going to the gym every single day of the week anyways, right? You should be taking at least 1 to 2 rest days. So having those 1 to 2 rest days line up on the days that you're getting your period that you feel the biggest impact is the smart way to accommodate your schedule and train smarter, not harder, right? Again, I would love to dive into right now cycle syncing and like really how to effectively train throughout the whole month to support your cycle health as a whole and better periods. But I don't want to overwhelm you guys with information today. So the ultimate point of this is that we want to make sure that you are moving, you are exercising, you are supporting your body, but you're not doing it in a way that is placing more physiological stress on your body than needed, especially if you're already dealing with hormone imbalances. Now, the fourth thing we are going to talk about when we're talking about improving your periods, your cycle health, and getting rid of your PMS is reducing your stress levels. So like we talked about earlier on in the beginning, when we talked about stress being a cause, PMS worsens from cortisol suppressing progesterone production. So we naturally want to decrease our stress levels. And I know, in a perfect world, like we would all be happy and free and no stress. And I get that it's not a perfect world and that's not realistic. So what we really want to focus on is less of like eliminating stress from your life and more of managing that stress and getting ahead of that stress through nervous system regulating activities and serotonin boosting activities. Now, from a nervous system regulation standpoint, this is going to be anything that is going to really cause you to slow down and become more intentional and present, right? Focusing on your breathing is kind of really the underlying foundation of a lot of these activities. So like deep breathing techniques, meditation, right? When you're doing meditation, a lot of it is focused on your breath, slowing down your breath, doing stretching or like restorative yoga, right? All of these things are slowing down. Another great one is a magnesium bath. You can also utilize, right, going back to supplements, you can use some supplements like adaptogenic herbs to help support your nervous system as well, like ashwagandha. But like this, again, going back to the supplements, is that you don't want to just pop a supplement and be like, cool, that's my stress response. Like you need to actively be taking responsibility of doing things that are going to reduce the stress from a lifestyle standpoint as well. A supplement is only going to be a band-aid. It's never going to correct the root cause. When we're talking about serotonin boosting activities, we want to do things that are going to actually elicit a response of like feeling good, mood regulation, happiness, right? We don't want to confuse serotonin boosting with dopamine boosting, right? Dopamine is when we get like that quick hit of like feeling good, but then it kind of just like dissipates and you go right back to being stressed, right? It's more of a distraction. It's commonly known as like our addictive neurotransmitter, right? It's like why we can't stop the TikTok scroll. You just like get addicted, right? Because it makes you feel good and like addicted to it in the moment, but it's not actually doing anything for like your underlying happiness or mood regulation. So we want to focus on things like going on a nature walk, spending time with your pet. If you're somebody who's creative, having a creative outlet like painting or drawing, if you like reading, right? Something that is going to actually uplift your mood. So these are the things that can help reduce our stress from a more foundational lifestyle approach. If you do want to learn more about stress management, I have a ton of other episodes addressing this, like how stress is impacting your results, talking about if you want to lose fat. There's a whole section of stress in the how to lose 15 to 20 pounds by summer episode, diving deeper into this. And I do have on my agenda to do a stress management technique and like diving more into like how to combat and overcome stress. That will be upcoming soon. It's in my next, like my 12-week podcast plan. So stay tuned for that one as well. Lots of promos for upcoming episodes in this one. So now we're going to move on to the fifth and final way in this episode to reduce your period pain and support your PMS to improving. And that is going to be supporting your liver. And in response to that, your gut and your kidneys. And this is because your liver is responsible for clearing excess hormones out of the body, especially estrogen, which we talked about before, how estrogen can really be a key player in having painful periods and brutal PMS symptoms. When estrogen is too high, that is often the culprit of a lot of these symptoms. Now, if your liver is not functioning well due to toxins, alcohol, poor diet, estrogen can build up and not get filtered out properly, which can lead to worsening PMS symptoms like we were just talking about. And once the liver processes those hormones and those toxins, they got to go somewhere, right? So this is why it's really important to make sure that our kidneys are functioning as well as our gut and our digestive system. Our digestive tract is functioning optimally as well. Because if your kidneys aren't functioning properly or you're not drinking enough and you're dehydrated, you can't filter out those toxins through your urine. Or if your digestive tract is not working properly, you're super constipated. This is when you're not going to be able to go number two, and you're not going to be excreting the waste and the toxins and those excess hormones through feces either, right? So this is why it's so important to make sure that we are hydrated, drinking, 2 to 3 liters per day for the average person. If you were an athlete or you exercise multiple times per week, 3 liters per day is pretty much the bare minimum I would recommend. Making sure you're getting some electrolytes in there, so salting your food or drinking an electrolyte powder to make sure that you are actually not just drinking water, but being hydrated, as well as eating enough fiber, so that way you can go to the bathroom regularly to get rid of this waste. And some easy and natural ways to support your detox pathways are going to be to eat more cruciferous vegetables. So that's going to be like your cauliflower, your broccoli. You can eat more fiber-rich foods, so making sure that you're getting a bare minimum of 20 to 25 grams of fiber per day. drinking warm lemon water in the morning, and as well as adding in a dandelion herbal tea. And before we wrap this up, I just wanted to address one really common FAQ or something that comes up a lot from people on social media that DM me, as well as new clients that got brought into my program. And that is them asking if birth control will solve these problems, right? Will birth control balance my hormones out? 9 out of 10 times they heard this from their doctor. And then, they're just looking for some more insight or support on this. And the answer is no. Birth control does not balance your hormones. Birth control actually turns off the communication from your brain to your ovaries so that your body stops producing your normal hormone amounts and replaces that with the synthetic hormones that are being ingested into your body from the birth control. So if you're taking a birth control pill, it's being ingested. If you have a patch or like a NuvaRing or something, or the depot shot, obviously it's being brought into your body in different ways. But because your body is receiving these synthetic hormones and that neurotransmitter relationship has been shut off between your brain and your ovaries and like your entire reproductive system, basically your body is being tricked into thinking that it already has those hormones being produced. So it stops producing them. And then you no longer have a natural flowing cycle because your body is not naturally producing these hormones with a rise and fall throughout the month. It's being replaced by the birth control. You no longer have a real functioning cycle, right? Your cycle is a fake cycle that is now being brought into your body from taking the birth control. And what the birth control does is the dosages of the hormones actually tricks your body into thinking that it's already ovulated, so that way it doesn't have to ovulate, so you can't get pregnant, right? So I'm in no way, shape, or form, trying to disparage birth control. If that's something that you have made the educated decision on taking with informed consent, that is totally your right, and I have no judgment here. But I do really get passionate about educating women about what actually happens with birth control, because a lot of people don't know. And I was one of those people, and I took it for 15 years with no idea what it actually was doing to my body, right? I was just told that, take this, it will get rid of your acne, you'll feel better, you'll get rid of period pain. I was like, this seems like a miracle drug, I'm on board. And, I unfortunately had to deal with consequences 15 years later. But I just wanted to answer that question because that is something that commonly gets asked, and it does not balance your hormones. It essentially shuts them off so you don't have to deal with them till a later date. So 9 out of 10 times when people do go on birth control to tackle or address these symptoms, the minute they come off birth control, a lot of it comes barreling back plus more, right? So that is something to consider if you are making the decision to take any form of birth control to address hormonal symptoms. Taking birth control to address Taking birth control to address hormonal symptoms is completely different than taking birth control to prevent pregnancy, right? So we don't want to confuse those things. But yeah, so let's recap. Today we covered 5 powerful ways to reduce period pain and balance your hormones naturally, right? Tackling it with nutrition hacks and eating to reduce period pain intentionally, as well as adding in supplementation when warranted, adding more movement and the right types of movement, and listening to your body to push and pull with movement to work with your cycle, as well as reducing stress and supporting your liver, your kidneys, and your gut health. So implementing all of these things together really should improve your period pain and your PMS symptoms drastically. Now, that's not to say that there aren't maybe some deeper rooted underlying causes going on. And in that case, that can be when it's really important to do some testing, work with a professional, dig a little bit deeper, right? And get some customized help. These are more just like an overarching guide to help you to get your feet wet and to start feeling better so you can feel more like yourself all month long. And if you're serious about tackling your PMS, go download the free guide that I mentioned in the beginning. The download link is in the description for the episode or the video wherever you're watching, and you just fill out that form and I will send it straight to your inbox. And if you try any of these tips, ladies, I would love for you to reach out to me on Instagram, DM me, let me know. I love hearing your wins and your main takeaways from these episodes. And if you found this episode helpful, send it to a friend, send it to a family member, right? My goal is to educate and help empower women. And the only way that's going to happen is more people who get exposed to this information. So thanks for listening, guys. And I will see you next week.